What were the best business books of 2023? That is the question we are going to answer today, and I am so excited to share the winners of the Inc. Non-Obvious Book Awards 2023 with you right now. My name is Rohit Bhargava. I'm the founder of the Non-Obvious Company. I'm an author, a publisher, and I am so excited this year because our Non-Obvious Book Awards are officially teaming up with Inc. magazine. We've got a great new partnership where I'll be writing a monthly column reviewing books with the team at Inc., and we work together to select the most interesting and non-obvious books of the year. And I say business books, but many of the books on our list this year are not technically business books, but they all have something to do with helping you in your career to get forward or helping you in your business. And so those are all of the titles we're going to share with you today. And we have already, as many of you have seen, announced our long list of titles, which is 100 of the best books of the year, which were already published. And you can see the full list on the Inc. website right now. And we'll share the URL down here at the bottom. Today, I'm going to share with you the shortlist announcement, which are the 10 best books and then 5 winners in 5 different categories. But before I do that, I just want to give a little bit of kudos to all of the authors who shared some of their amazing books with us this year. As happens every single year, we get more submissions than we've ever gotten before. I have a car full of books that keep arriving. It's very exciting, actually. It's like getting presents all the time because I love books. And if you're watching this, you probably love books too. So thank you to all of the submissions. We really appreciate you. And one of the reasons we do this is because we want to use this platform to showcase the amazing power of books. And so all of the books that we're talking about here and all of the books that you can find on the Inc. website through the partnership, both from this year's awards, but also the past several years, because a lot of the ideas in these books, they don't expire after a year. You can go back and look at many of them, and it's amazing how powerful these books can be. And the one thing I will tell you from having met a lot of successful people and interviewed them on my shows is that really successful people tend to also be readers. And so if you're looking to power your vision and go to the next level, you should be reading more books. And that is one of the arguments that hopefully you'll see through some of the announcements and all of the things that we have here. And so without further ado, let me go through a quick recap of the long list. And I'll share with you here some of the titles that are on that long list. And as you're watching this carousel, I'll just say that our criteria for using to judge some of the books on the long list is very specific. It starts with books that are in print format only. So we look at books in print because we want to get the whole package of the book. And frankly, when you do a book and you get it out into print, there's a certain level of effort involved there, where if you just do an ebook, it doesn't require that same level of effort. And so we just wanted to narrow it down to books that have to be in print. Obviously, they're in other formats as well. So if you prefer ebooks or audiobooks, you can get most of the books we feature in all of those formats. But we only looked at books in print. In terms of the criteria that we looked at originality, writing quality, the core topic, how shareable the book was, its significance, and the practicality of it. And we look at, like I said before, how a book might apply in a business context, even though not every book that we select would be considered a quote unquote business book. Finally, what we're looking for most often is non-obvious concepts that offer a uniquely interesting way of looking at the world. Those are the long list selections for the Non-Obvious Book Awards. The one question I am asked most about these awards is what makes them different. So first of all, any book that's submitted to these awards doesn't have to pay any sort of submission fees. And the reason for that is that this is not a money-making venture for us. We're not trying to create an awards program to sort of create a vertical where we can then upsell different services and things like that. The intention of these book awards programs is to showcase amazing, powerful books. The other thing is that you'll notice that as we bring these together, we don't really put books into the traditional categories that you often see in book awards programs, like leadership books or sales books. And that really sets us apart, I think. And the last thing is that every single book, as long as it's in print format, is welcome. Doesn't matter what country it comes from. You don't need a big publisher behind it. It could be self-published and print on demand. We consider every single book that we receive as a submission as long as it's in print. A couple of things that you're going to hear about in this video. The first is some non-obvious trends from books. When you get as many book submissions throughout the year as we do, you start to see that there are some topics that are covered by multiple books. And if you look at this on an annual basis, some really interesting trends start to emerge. And one of the things that I do professionally and what I do a lot of talks and workshops about is curation of ideas. I write books about trends, I'm pulling different things together, I'm really kind of making the puzzle, so to speak. And so I'm using that same skill set in this case to identify 6 non-obvious themes from the year. And so that's the first thing that I'll share with you. The next is some of my picks for the best book titles and book covers. Once I do that, then we're going to jump into the shortlist selections. I'll talk a little bit about each book on the shortlist, offer a quote from that book, and then we'll talk about the 5 winners of the Non-Obvious Book Awards for this year. So that's our program, and I'm going to start by sharing some of the themes from books across the entire year. All right, it is time to talk about some book-related trends for the year. And the first one that I wanted to spotlight is human AI. There were, as you would imagine, a lot of books about AI this year. And one of the things that they focused on, many of them, was how do we find the balance between humanity and artificial intelligence? How are we going to train the algorithms to be more human and to respect humanity? And how are we going to train them to not be as biased as they have been, or many of them have been in the past? All of those were topics that I found in several books, many of which made some of our lists all about AI and the future. And that's going to continue, I suspect, to be a hot topic moving forward. But this year it was all about human versus AI, or human together with AI. And so the trend here was human AI. The next one that we spotlighted was good work. And there were a lot of books coming out of the pandemic last year and the year before that spoke about remote work, or like how work was changing in terms of where we did it. But this year what was interesting was that there were a number of books talking about happiness related to work, but also just work in general. Intrinsic motivation, doing a good job, what does a good job mean? How do we create more good jobs in the world? All of those were topics that really reframed what work should be, what work means, how meaningful work happens, how to make our own work more meaningful. These were the sorts of topics that related to this particular trend of good work. The next one is forgotten foundations, and that was a term that I chose to describe books that were about things that we often don't think about, like trees or infrastructure or roads or parking or underwater exploration. I mean, all of those things are foundations for us in terms of the way that we live our lives now. These were the forgotten foundations, and that was a theme that we saw across many books this year. The next one was broken healthcare. And if you're a follower of healthcare at all, you know that healthcare has probably been broken for a while when you think about how it's practiced in America, but also in many other countries. And a number of these books focused on all of the various reasons why it's broken. The patient-doctor connection, it was one of the elements, the role of finances and who pays for what, and healthcare financing, and how that's broken, the way that pharmaceutical companies work with healthcare companies, work with insurance companies, and then the patient in between and doctors in between. These were all the sorts of topics that related to some of these books that talked about healthcare being broken, and many of them offered various solutions as ways that we might be able to address and fix some of those problems, which was really powerful as well. So your theme here, broken healthcare. Next one was beyond happiness. So we've seen the happiness metric, happiness measurement, and the quest towards happiness. But what was interesting this year was that, related to the topic about work and doing good work, but the happiness constant started to get more dimension, I saw this year. So instead of just thinking about being happy, there were other elements of it that talked about it. So a couple of the books that we were involved in, Dare to be Naive, Good Awkward, Wonder Hell, these were reframing what it takes to be happy, or what you should use as perhaps your metric for what you're going to do next to find fulfillment, or to hone in on an element of your personality, or even just something that is in your daily life that you don't pay enough attention to. There were a few books about awe, some about wonder and focusing on wonder, some with the wisdom, the ROI of LOL, which was another good title about like why we need to laugh more and how to bring more laughing into it. And so all of these I thought were a dimension of something that was a really hot topic, which was happiness. But this year there were a lot of books that really went beyond that to say, well, what does that really mean, and what is real happiness? And the last one that I'll share is one that's personal for me because I wrote a book that came out this year called The Future Normal that was all about imagining a better future. And a range of books that I saw this year were really about taking that optimistic vision of the future, a future that does not become a dystopia, and talking about what it would take to create that future in reality. And a lot of times when you see people who work in futures work, which I see a lot of, they're focused on all the things that could go wrong, or they present them as scenarios. Like it could go wrong this way or it could go right this way. And what was really nice to see this year was that a lot of these books about the future talked about what it takes to get a better future and how we can build it, and even showcase some of the people, as we did in our book, that are making the better future for the world right now. These are all positive messages about the future, and I think that those are the ones that we need to read because, as I often say in my talks, the only future we can make is the one we can imagine. And these books help you to imagine a better future, and that's a wonderful thing. So those were some of the themes from this year's best books. So this was such a fun exercise to go through all of the hundreds of books we received as submissions and identify some of the best titles. And these are some of my picks and why I think they made such great titles. 10 Birds That Changed the World. Okay, hyperbolic, maybe, but great title for a book and really aligns to how the book was actually structured. There were 10 stories of 10 different birds with a really compelling argument for how they changed the world. Generation Dread was a great topic, which was all about climate anxiety and how there's an entire generation that's just unsure of what the future is going to be because of climate. Really nice way of bringing those things together into a title of a book. The Story of Art Without Men. Gives you a perspective, gives you a point of view. It's a book about art, it's beautifully illustrated, but the cover is very minimalistic. And Jellyfish Age Backwards, I mean, it's got intrigue built into it. A lot of the cover titles that I like tend to have a little bit of that curiosity awakening. Good for a Girl, a woman running in a man's world. This takes a phrase that has been used in a derogatory way and puts it into the title of the book in a really clever way. And sometimes that's what great titles do. They take a phrase that we kind of know from out there and use it to offer a context to something that a book's going to talk about. And this title did that really well. How to Not Kill Yourself. This is exactly what you would expect this book to be, but really powerful, sobering title. And it's one person's reflections, the author's reflections on all of the times that he has in fact tried to commit suicide and how he didn't, and what his story might be able to help teach somebody who is in that moment of desperation or in that moment where they are thinking about taking their own life. This was a clever play on Homo sapiens and things that we typically ascribe to humanity, or beings that are not plants. And so putting Plantasapiens in there as a way of relaying that in the title was a strong way of indicating what the perspective of the book would be. I kind of got what the argument was going to be just from the title. Move Fast and Fix Things. Love it when someone takes a phrase that we know and just twists it just a little bit. You know, it's not move fast and break things, which Silicon Valley has had as a motto for a long time and really has caused a lot of destruction in the world. This is move fast and fix things. Like, literally, dude. When you read this, you kind of want to say it the way you imagine somebody would say it, which is a really good way to tell that your title has emotion built into it. If people hear it in a certain way when they read it, that's really interesting. And the subtitle here is Arguing for the Good in Bad English, which the subtitle itself might be bad English. I don't actually know, but it's just a clever combination of subtitle and title that really works for this book. Queer Career. I love a rhyming title. Sexuality and Work in Modern America. Just a great title and perspective. Again, you get it right from the title of the book, what it's going to be about and what it's going to focus on. And some titles are highly likely to position a book as really being for someone, because when they read it, they say, oh, that person, the author, they get me. And I thought this title was a really nice way of doing that, where somebody who was the target audience for the book would immediately hear that title and say, yeah, that book's for me. This title is the combination of emotional and maybe just a little heartbreaking, because you hear this title and you immediately think, if you're a parent, about how fast indeed it does go. And, you know, and I've got one kid in college now and the other one in high school, soon to be in college, and it does go fast. And so you see this and you see the image of like the little baby shoes all the way to like the soccer boots that are totally worn down. And we've had both in our house. And it does go fast. But this one, again, it's a play on a known cliche, the school of hard knocks. This is the school of hard talks. And hard talks are hard to do. So this gives you a sense of how to have those sorts of conversations. And you get from the title immediately what this book is really going to be about. This title was just too good not to include. How to Forage for Mushrooms Without Dying. Sometimes that little twist at the end is what really makes a title amazing. And this one was that. It wasn't How to Forage for Mushrooms, which is kind of a boring title. It's How to Forage for Mushrooms Without Dying, which if you want to forage for mushrooms, that seems like a pretty important last piece to add to the title. Mother Tongue was a great play on words. It's a double meaning. I'm a big fan of double meaning words in titles. Again, curiosity, piece of curiosity, using a known kind of word and having a double meaning behind it. Really strong pieces of a good title. One of the most fun parts of evaluating books is looking at the covers and cover designs. And the first one that I'll share with you is a larger format book called Afrofuturism. The style of the font and the sort of elements of the side and also the choice of yellow here, it's just a really great format for a book. There are black people in the future, great tagline for the back. Really did a nice job positioning this book and making it something that people would want to pick up and share, and it's a great gift book. The next one here is The Language of Trees. And this one's got a really unique design because the dust jacket here only goes 2/3 of the way up. And the way that it's put together with lots of different contributions from different people is really a nice format. It stands out. And you can see that there's a really nice printed case wrap here with almost like a foil that goes underneath. Absolutely beautiful job in terms of both the cover design for this as well as the printing and the packaging of it. Another one that stood out, and this one really kind of pops on the shelf. There's some book cover designs where they just stand out because of the amazing cover colors that are chosen there. This one, great title also, Rich White Men, but a drawing of what's pretty clearly a sort of nod to the Monopoly guy. But if you look really closely, it's really not the Monopoly guy, so I guess they could get away with it from a licensing point of view. It's a very meaningful image, and you can tell immediately. If I just pop this up like this, you saw the title and then I put it back down, you would probably be able to guess what this book is about, which is a great criteria to look at for whether a cover design really does its job. This is a book from one of my favorite authors, Simon Winchester, and it is a very vast topic. The subtitle here is The Transmission of Knowledge from Ancient Wisdom to Modern Magic. And what you'll see as you look around this wheel is lots of different significant moments from history, because this is an encyclopedic type of book. And sometimes a great cover design, it fits the topic of the book particularly well. This one was just a gorgeous look for a cover. The Earth Transformed, an untold story, is really highly likely to appeal to somebody who loves this type of book. Even the way that the pages are done on the side, sort of like a folded folio style, which is sometimes used on these books. Really nice job packaging this book and making it appeal to people who would be interested in that. This one was just a great concept, foolproof, why misinformation affects our minds and how to build immunity. And it just kind of plays with the word, plays with the title. So really simple concept, but sometimes these simple concepts really stand out and make a book something that people might want to pick up and pay attention to. The Status Revolution, and if you can see it here, it's a baseball cap, which is sort of lowbrow, and the royalty crown, which is highbrow, and they're combined together. So it's a really memorable visual. The yellow on the blue doesn't necessarily show up that well, so maybe a different color there might have been nice, but the visual was so iconic that you just remember it because the visual was so amazing. This one was a great illustration. It's all about why cars make life worse and what to do about it. But the visualization of it alongside this really nice title was really strong. And one of the elements of this cover design that I thought they did really well was you can see that it's sort of stacked sideways on the back. So sometimes what makes the dust jacket really nice is how the front cover follows through to the back cover. This one, The Four Workarounds, is all about sort of ways of hacking things to do things differently. And having the tortoise on the back of the hare was a fable style image of it, but immediately meaningful to a lot of people. I mean, a lot of us know that story. This next one that I really love is called Culture, the story from cave art to K-pop. And it's got this really nice, closely cut image of something that sort of depicts culture from an ancient time. And then it sort of follows that through to the back. Nice use of colors. This one was a paperback, Encountourism, The Neglected Joys of Being in Person. Great topic, but also just a really crazy, busy cover, but hand illustrated and nicely using colors all the way through. This next one is called Building, a Carpenter's Notes on the Life and Art of Work. And you can see that it's got some conceptual drawings from this side that go all the way through to the finished thing. And if you look at the overall dust jacket, you can see how the whole thing is finished all the way through. So the topic of the book is about a memoir, and it carries through nicely to the way that the cover is put together, and pretty original in the design of it. This next one is just a huge color choice, but also Palo Alto. The title really pops. So the combination of the title with the color choice here was just a really strong visual. If you see this from across the store on a shelf, you will immediately be intrigued if you care about Silicon Valley and Palo Alto or anything that the book might be talking about. And the last one that I'll share with you is really interesting in its very unique color choice. The title is The Matter of Everything. And that subtitle here is How Curiosity, Physics, and Improbable Experiments Change the World. So high intrigue, a great use of an image that people who are into physics would recognize, and a nice combination of all of those elements on the back. So those were some of my picks for the best cover designs of 2023. And now here is the moment you have been waiting for, the shortlist announcement. Here are the winners, the selections for the Inc. Non-Obvious Book Awards Shortlist 2023. Fool Me Once is a book from accounting professor Kelly Richmond Pope all about the scams, stories, and secrets from the trillion-dollar fraud industry, and is our pick for the 2023 Inc. Non-Obvious Book Awards shortlist. This wonderfully written book has amazing stories and would not be something that you would expect to be highly engaging given that it's written by an accounting professor, but the stories are wonderfully told, the writing is really interesting, and here's a passage just to give you a sense of the book. I'm fixated on how people cheat, and even more by how they rationalize it. As for whistleblowers, I am adamantly, vehemently, fervently against the word rat, snitch, or any other pejorative. I believe whistleblowers are heroes. With that quote, you sort of get a sense of the perspective that the author is going to bring, which is that there's these people who expose these frauds, but more interestingly, there's reasons why people commit the frauds in the first place. And what the book does a really interesting job of is telling the stories of the whistleblowers, the ones who expose the fraud, but also the mindset behind the people who commit the fraud, and talks about how we all could be the sort of people who could do these things. And in some cases, maybe we do in small ways. Most of us aren't embezzling millions of dollars, but there are small pieces of fraud that make it into our daily lives. And the perspective of this book really did a great job of highlighting that and making a topic that feels like something that bad guys do, fraud, really approachable and relatable for all of the rest of us. Congratulations to Kelly Richmond Pope and the rest of the team for Fool Me Once making our shortlist. Here's a question. How do you solve the complex problems of work and home? Here's an answer, a workaround. Our next pick for the 2023 Inc. Non-Obvious Book Awards shortlist is The 4 Workarounds by Paulo Savaget. And this book is all about the hacks and ways that we can solve big problems in 4 specific ways. The author writes about the piggyback, the loophole, the roundabout, and the next best as solutions, and does it in a really entertaining way across the book that covers all sorts of unexpected topics, from public urination to abortions in international waters. It's filled with stories like this that illustrate how each workaround works and gives you some recent, really useful tools and ways to be able to use each of the workarounds as well. For all of those reasons, one of the picks for our Non-Obvious Book Awards Shortlist 2023 is The 4 Workarounds. We hear a lot in business today about storytelling, but writing your own story is really hard. What if the secret to doing it was to imagine you were writing your own obituary? That's the fascinating premise behind this next pick for our Non-Obvious Book Awards, Yours Truly, An Obituary Writer's Guide to Telling Your Story by James R. Haggerty. The book comes from the perspective of a journalist who spent decades writing obituaries for the Wall Street Journal, and it offers some amazing tips on how to better tell your story in real and practical ways. Here's a quote from the book. When I sum up other people's lives, I'm not writing tributes. I aim to include the ups and downs, the moments of glory and the flops, sometimes even the humiliations. I hope this book will inspire you to tell your story and perhaps help other people tell theirs. What's really interesting about the book is that it talks about telling your story as a gift to the world, to your family, to your friends, to your loved ones, and something that we all need to try and take time to do, even if it doesn't necessarily come with very pleasant thoughts about how we won't be around forever. There's a real power in taking back your story. This book will definitely help you do that. For all of those reasons, yours truly is our pick for the Inc. Non-Obvious Book Awards 2023 shortlist. I am a big fan of old bookstores, and so our next pick for the Non-Obvious Book Awards shortlist is one that I personally advocated for, called Once Upon a Tome, The Misadventures of a Rare Bookseller. And this one is a really well-written look at what it takes to be an everyday bookseller in an old bookstore. And I think you'll get a real sense of the writing from this particular quote. There's something wistful about old books when they are gathered in one place. They have a faintly unsatisfied smell, as if they're all distantly aware that they've missed their chance to be a worldwide smash hit. Not only does this book talk about old books, but it gives you some real business lessons about running a store, because there's a lot of insights here about how to judge customers, who's potentially going to steal a book, who isn't, who's going to be just there for browsing, how to deal with your best customers, the collectors who come in for one reason and you really need to cater to them because they're the lifeblood of an old bookstore. So all of these things really brought to life the misadventures of an old bookstore owner. For all of those reasons, Once Upon a Tome is one of our picks for the 2023 Inc. Non-Obvious Book Awards. We live in a world surrounded by short-termism, which makes our next selection for the Inc. Non-Obvious Book Awards shortlist such a timely read. The Long View by Richard Fisher focuses on what it takes to have that long-term view that we all desperately need in society. Here's a quote. Existential hope. This is the opposite of existential catastrophe. It's the idea that there could be radical turns for the better, so long as we commit to bringing them to reality. Existential hope is not about escapism, utopias, or pipe dreams, but about preparing the ground. This book offers lots of ideas for what it could be, how meaningful it could be, for all of us to think in more long-term ways and change the way that we think, to shift our perspective and shift our point of view. For all of those reasons, The Long View by Richard Fisher is one of our picks for the Inc. Non-Obvious Book Awards shortlist. Almost every day we see news stories about anxiety when it comes to AI. What is it going to take to live in an AI-driven future? Our next pick for the 2023 Non-Obvious Book Awards is Unmasking AI by Joy Bolamwini, who's an amazing researcher who's been publishing and writing and talking about how to create better AI, more human AI that has less bias within it. And for all of those reasons, this book is a wonderful read. Here's a quote. None of us can escape the impact of the coded gaze. You have a place in this conversation and in the decisions that impact your daily life, which are increasingly being shaped by advancing technology that sits under the wide, often opaque umbrella of artificial intelligence. If you know anything about her body of work, this is the book that you've been waiting for. It gives you a personal memoir, insight into her journey towards trying to change the world of AI, and really is an important look at the sort of thinking that we're going to need. So for all of those reasons, Unmasking AI is one of our picks for the 2023 Inc. Non-Obvious Book Awards shortlist. What if parking explained the world? Our next pick for the 2023 Inc. Non-Obvious Book Awards is Paved Paradise, which is specifically about that, how parking might actually explain the world. It's by author Henry Graeber, and here's a quote from the book. A parking space is nothing less than the link between driving and life itself. We expect parking to be immediately available, directly in front of our destination, and most important, free. This is unique. It would be unimaginable to hold any other good or service to the same standard. In this book, you really get to see what parking has done to every aspect of our world, from how we interact with one another, to how we get from one place to another, to urban planning. All of those things have everything to do with the way that parking is structured. It may not seem that this is such an overarching topic, but what really makes this book stand out is that it makes the argument quite compellingly that if we're going to save the world, maybe we need to rethink parking in order to do it. Against Techno-Ableism is a manifesto that explores and explodes what most people think they know about disability, from Virginia Tech Disability Studies professor Ashley Shue, and is our pick for the 2023 Inc. Non-Obvious Book Awards shortlist. This wonderful book details all of the things that we should think about when it comes to disability, but often don't. One of the things that it lays out is the 5 main tropes of how disabilities and people who have disabilities are often presented with. The pitiable freaks, the moochers and fakers, bitter cripples, shameful sinners, or inspirational overcomers. That's just one of the interesting insights that you'll get from this book. Here's a quote from the book. "The language we choose for ourselves differs from the language others apply to us. We are named and claimed by experts who may know our bodies in limited ways, but rarely know our communities, our experiences outside their clinics, or our reception in the world." That is just one of the great insights you'll get from this book, Against Techno-Ableism. Why does status matter in our world, and how is it getting reinvented right now? The Status Revolution is our next pick for the Inc. Non-Obvious Book Awards shortlist. And this book offers some really interesting insights for how status and the way that we measure status has started to shift in our world, and how it's throwing a lot of other things into disarray. Here's a quote. "The reason for so much hostility and existential anxiety across society is that we now no longer know how to measure our value and standing among our fellow citizens. Status is no longer for the gilded elect, it's for everyone." So what does happen when luxury products are no longer an indication of wealth? It's a really fascinating exploration of not just the luxury lifestyle or luxury brands, but also what that indicates towards our culture when luxury can be defined by anyone to be anything. For all of those reasons, the Status Revolution is one of our picks for the 2023 Inc. Non-Obvious Book Awards shortlist. How good are you at seeing how your workplace actually operates? Our next pick for the 2023 Inc. Non-Obvious Book Awards shortlist is How Work Works, The Subtle Science of Getting Ahead Without Losing Yourself by author Michelle King. This book gives you all of the things that you wish you learned at some point, or maybe still need to learn about operating in a workplace. It demystifies why some people get ahead faster while others don't, and gives you some real practical tips to be able to supercharge your career to progress further and get more adept at learning how to read the air. Here's a quote from the book. "Being able to read the air is about understanding the how of work. It is not just about knowing the shared norms that govern our everyday interactions. It also includes a deep understanding of your work environment regardless of the setting." All of the chapters in this book are about being able to do that and be the sort of person that does it. And it really does make a huge impact in your career in terms of being able to progress and get better. For all of those reasons, How Work Works is one of our picks for the Inc. Non-Obvious Book Awards shortlist. Congratulations to Michelle King and the rest of her team. A very big congratulations to these 10 books, which are our shortlist picks for the 2023 Inc. Non-Obvious Book Awards. And now it is time to announce the 5 winners of this year's Book Awards contest. We are living in a culture that is fueled by outrage, and so it seems like every morning when we wake up, there's something new to be angry about. Our pick for the most useful book of 2023 is one that helps us all to deal with all of this outrage. It is The Outrage Machine by Tobias Rose Stockwell. And in this book, we really see the rise of outrage culture, but also some real practical solutions for how to fight back against it. It's only by understanding how our anger is being tweaked by all of the algorithms that each of us can start to take back our own attention and do more with our days than just wake up being angry. Here's a quote from the book. "You will pay attention, This is what social media does to us regularly. It encourages us to observe conflicts and pick sides on topics about which we would otherwise have few opinions. When we are shown what is wrong in the world, we feel the desire to correct it. We want to share these transgressions with our networks. These enemies are now everywhere, and we feel the need to call them out. The book has many different pathways to be able to understand outrage, charts, graphs, research, all sorts of things. It was a really comprehensive look at outrage culture as well as how to solve it. And for all of those reasons, it's our pick for the most useful book of 2023. Congratulations to Tobias and the rest of the team for Outrage Machine. Are you a believer in the power of the arts? Our next book and the pick for the most shareable book of 2023 is one that argues something that many of us believe but maybe didn't have the words to prove, which is that art changes us. Your Brain on Art, How the Arts Transforms Us, argues that we need art in order to become better as people. Here's a quote from the book. A field that is radically changing how we understand and translate the power of the arts is called neuroaesthetics, or more broadly, neuroarts. In short, arts and aesthetics change us, and as a result, they can transform our lives. This book features lots of interesting case studies from how coloring can help reduce anxiety through to all of the different effects that art actually has on our brains in terms of how we think, how we relate to our senses, and why we need it in order to get better as people. For all of those reasons, this book, Your Brain on Art, is our pick for the most shareable book of 2023. Congratulations to Susan and Ivy and the rest of the team behind the book. Our pick for the most original book of 2023 is about an object that most of us interact with on a daily basis, but never think about. Pockets, An Intimate History of How We Keep Things Close by Hannah Carlson, focuses on a very unusual topic. Your first thought, depending on what gender you are, is why do men's clothing have more pockets and women's clothing don't? And yes, the book does talk about that. But what's really interesting is how many pieces of history and how human evolution might be explained by having pockets or not having pockets. Here's a quote from the book. Following the proliferation of pockets, makers and tradesmen began to miniaturize useful instruments with the notion of portability in mind. While handguns had been among the first and most notorious pocket-sized objects, most tools were not so contentious. So the book talks about how pockets were sewn into garments, how it enabled things to be made smaller. It talks about the physical statement that it gave for you to be walking around with your hands in your pockets. And for all of those reasons, and also the fact that the book is amazingly illustrated with wonderful drawings and almost is like an art history book, this was our pick for the most original book of 2023. Congratulations to Hannah and the rest of the team for Pockets. What percentage of mega projects like bridges, skyscrapers, or dams do you think are completed on time, on budget, and deliver the benefit that's expected? 0.5%. If that number surprises you, it's just one of the insights that you'll get from our pick for this year's most important business book of the year, How Things Get Done. This book is a fascinating exploration of mega projects, but also digs into what it takes for any project to succeed or fail. Here's a quote from the book. Why is the track record of big projects so bad? Even more important, what about rare, tantalizing exceptions? What I'm interested in here is the universal drivers of project failure and success. This book offers a roadmap for why projects fail and is a really timely read at a moment when we have so many of these projects happening in the world, and the pattern seems to be the same every single time. The instructional method of this book and the real research behind it, looking into a database of 16,000 projects to find out what the commonalities were and how to actually map those out to real techniques, made this a really timely and important read, and our pick for the most important read of 2023. Sometimes the most engaging books are just a little bit weird. And that definitely describes our pick for the most entertaining book of 2023, The Theory of Everything Else by podcast host Dan Schreiber. This book is a engagement in curiosity. There's so many stories here about things that you might have heard but haven't heard, or stories that will just take you completely by surprise. It was just a very fun read. Here's a quote from the book. This is a book about those people who ask big questions and investigate them, no matter how much ridicule is piled upon them. And they're not few in number. They're everywhere. Just look around you. We could all be people like that. That is, at its heart, the idea of non-obvious thinking, too. That we all take time to find those lessons and those stories from things that we see around us that we just are curious about. And so, congratulations to Dan Schreiber for The Theory of Everything Else, our pick for the 2023 Inc. Non-Obvious Book Awards Most Entertaining Book. And that concludes all of our selections for the shortlist announcement for the 2023 Inc. Non-Obvious Business Book Awards, as well as some ideas on themes from books throughout the year, the best cover designs, the best titles, and more insights about books. Thank you again to all of the authors and publicists and publishers who participated in this year's book awards, to my full team and everyone who helped us figure out what the selections were going to be, and to all of you for listening to some of our suggestions for the best books of the year, and for being readers and for supporting books. Remember, we need to find great ideas from books, and they can make us better in everything that we do. So this is Rohit Bhargava, founder of the Non-Obvious Book Awards, once more saying thank you for listening, and always stay non-obvious.